Oh my goodness, we've got to stop. I can't stand the sound of that bike anymore.
Mark, I'm so sorry. I really have no idea where this creak's coming from.
Well, I'm sure many of you are watching this now and can really sympathise with this. You're on an otherwise blissful and peaceful ride, only for it to be ruined by a creaking, squeaking, or even rattling bike, or your friend's bike.
It can be so frustrating. You're out on a ride and it just diverts all your attention away from the ride you're supposed to be on. All you can hear is that noise, but trying to figure out where that noise is coming from is a lot easier said than done.
Well, to help you diagnose or potentially fix any of those issues with your bike, we're going to head inside right now and we're going to run you through some of the most common sounds and creaks to come from your bike.
Now, given it was my bike making such a noise, Mark's, well, he's actually left me all alone to it. Although some of these bikes can sound like they're absolutely falling apart and it's a catastrophic noise, thankfully that is rarely the case. Modern carbon fibre bikes have sounds that resonate throughout the frame, making the smallest of noise actually seem, well, pretty serious. But that is thankfully not often the case, and we're going to take you through a step-by-step guide of the simple things that you can check your bike to see where they might be coming from. So my first point of call is going to be the pedals. Now the chances are, unless you're traveling to races often or just quite happy to strip your bike down from time to time, these things haven't probably come off your bike in a long time, so they're a prime candidate for some inspection. Also, if you're riding your bike lots in wet conditions or you're power washing your bike down to clean it, there's a good chance the grease that was in there is long since gone. So what we're going to do is take our pedal off and then get rid of anything that's left in there, dirt or grime or any grease that might be left. Wipe that all down, clean the threads completely, and then pop it back in. Also, if it's a little bit too loose, there's a good chance that could be making quite a racket and a noise too. So by going through that whole process and just giving your pedals some good TLC isn't going to do you any harm whatsoever. Now, since we're in this region of the bike, the next obvious place to have a quick look at is our chainrings. These always, or I shouldn't say always, generally come as two separate rings and they're held together by a series of bolts. Sometimes that might be on the front, but in this case they're hidden in behind so we can't see them. But what can happen is that these just either aren't greased up enough when they're assembled or the grease just happens to wear away over time. So what you can do is just get in behind there, take each bolt out, have a look at it, clean it down, reapply some grease, and simply just put everything back together as you took it apart, and perhaps even add some sort of thread strengthening compound like Loctite, which can just help to keep everything snug once you've put everything back in together. Next thing that we're going to look at is our saddle. Now, believe it or not, that noise that appears to be coming from the front of our bike could actually be resonating through the frame from the saddle. A good way to check if this is the case while out on a bike ride is simply to get out of the saddle and do some riding to see if that noise continues, and if it doesn't, then we could well have found our issue. So what we're going to do is take the saddle off, and a culprit that can often be the case is our saddle rails. So you need to take the saddle off, but before you do that, take a picture, make a note, mark where the saddle is fore and aft on the clamp, and then get a good idea of where your saddle was before you take it off, because that's a bit of a nightmare if you forget. So we'll get it off, clean everything, all our points of contact here with the saddle rails, and then just add a little bit of oil. And if they're carbon rails, do be careful that that could actually damage the carbon, so just make sure you know what you're using. Now, whilst we've got our saddle off, it makes total sense to actually have a look at the seat post clamp where the saddle connects to our seat post. So that's in around about this region on this bike here. So just take the saddle off, clean everything out, take the bolts apart if there are there, and just re-grease all of those too, because that could well be the issue as well. Following on from the saddle, the next part of the bike that we're going to look at is our seat post. Now, this is a part of the bike that can have all sorts of noises coming from it, and that's largely due to the fact that it bears the brunt of the rider's weight when we're cycling. But it can often be confused with the bottom bracket noise, so a good way of trying to determine which of the two it is to unclip when you're cycling along, take all the power out of your pedals and obviously the bottom bracket, and if you've still got a noise, then there is a good chance that it is coming from our seat post. So what to do? Firstly, you need to take some electrical tape, mark the height of your seat post so you don't forget that, and then we take our seat post out and thoroughly clean the surface of the seat post. But not just that, we also need to clean what's inside the seat tube. So I like to take a rag, something like a screwdriver, which is nice and long, and that just lets you get right down in there, to clean anything that's in there and get it out of the way. If it's a metal on metal contact, then get some grease right down in there as far as the seat post is going to go. Or if in this case it's carbon to carbon, then use something like a friction paste. Finally, we also need to grease the bolts for our seat clamp too. So how about our wheels? Now I'll be honest, this is not something I've personally had noise or creaky issues with, but I've certainly heard of others who have. And an area where that can come from is the crossover of the spokes, which is just in here. And a good thing to do is just put a tiny little drop of oil there. And another place you can do while you're at it is at the head of the spoke there. A little bit to each of those points. Make sure you wipe away any excess. And the further point that has a problem with on our wheels is skewers. But again, all you need to do is make sure that you put a little bit of oil into each component part of the skewer, wipe any excess beforehand, and then put it back in. Another cause of noise from our wheel region is also from the cassette. Now, clearly a worn cassette is gonna sound pretty ugly, but also if your lock ring in here isn't tight, then that can really sound pretty horrific. So make sure that that's tightened up nice and snug before you go and looking for other further noises. If you've still not got to the bottom of your noise, then the chances are it's coming from the slightly more complicated parts of the bike. So let's talk about our headset. The cause could be coming from any number of the bearings, caps and bolts that holds this whole area together. But let's not forget that could also be our stem and our handlebar as well. So essentially we have to take everything apart bit by bit to try and see where that root cause is coming from. A possible plan of action might be to slide the fork out from the head tube, clean and re-grease all the surfaces. If that doesn't sort you out, then you might have to look into removing and reinstalling the cups and crown race that are inside there with some grease, but do remember to make sure the cups are sitting perfectly snug. Failing that, it might be that you need to replace the headset bearings, but if you're like me and mechanically challenged, I'd get along to a bike shop that can do it all for you. But finally, the bottom bracket. And without doubt, it is one of the most common complaints heard by shop mechanics. And as I said earlier, these noises in our frames have a habit of resonating, and for that reason, the bottom bracket can often be quite hard to track down. It's often on dry days that you can get the noise the worst. As our cranks are rotating, the bottom bracket just creaks, and it's really because of all the grease that's been washed away over time. So to fix this ourselves, you can take the crank arm off, ensuring that the bearings are smooth, re-greasing the axle surface and all the other major surfaces, putting it all back together again and torquing up to the recommended force. But as we said with the headset bearings earlier, it might just be that the bottom bracket simply needs replaced, and that's because the bearings have gotten misshapen and are causing friction. But like I also said before, that's probably a job that maybe the bike shop would better be able to handle. Then there is the frame itself. If you've explored all of these other points on the bike and you've still got a creaky noise, then it might be worth taking a bit more of a closer look at the frame to see if you've got any issues. But fingers crossed that isn't the case. We do all have some bike mechanic related stories, so please feel free to share those in the comments below and let us know. If you've liked this video, please give us the thumbs up, and do remember to click on the globe to subscribe and see more of our videos on the channel. And finally, for a video on Park Tool Q&A, you can click on that there.